Greetings, and konnichiwa, and welcome to the Onyx Tavern. This is your host, the Barkeep, bringing you podcast 41 here at the tavern, presented by Hirotaku.com. Well, guys, as I said in my last video, I had watched all of Go Buster, and to that effect, I did go ahead and watch the Go Buster versus Go Buster movie, which, for those of you who don't know, it's basically an alternate reality Go Busters. We get to see what they would look like if the event that 13 years ago that they turned them into the Go Busters and so forth did not go ahead and happen. Now, how we get to that into the film is very interesting, and I want to explore two elements of that. So basically, the Go Busters in the opening 5 minutes of the film fight a new villain who is, I believe, from space or another dimension or something, and they die. Yes, the Go Busters do not win. They indeed die. And Cheetah Nick goes to heaven and meets God. So let's stop right there real quick, because within the first 5 minutes of this film, we've learned two very important things in regard to the Sentai universe. First of all, machines such as Cheetah Nick and Jay have souls. And two, God exists. Now, I want to go ahead and tackle these as quickly as I can to kind of explain why the movie basically buries the lead that we focus on these alternate universe Go Busters when we really should be focusing on these two aspects that the film kind of pushes aside as being minor, basically. So let's talk about Cheetah Nick and essentially the fact that he has a soul. Because if we go ahead and watch a lot of past Sentai, you know, they'll be fighting machines or demons or mutants or whatever. And, you know, the thing is, in like standards and practices for American audiences, is that you can't rip a person's head off because he's a living thing. But if it's a robot, oh, you can do whatever you want to a robot because it's just a robot. It's not alive. Well, if we applied the logic that Cheetah Nick is alive, doesn't it suggest that other machines and Power Rangers and Sentai, well, Power Rangers to the extent, in the sense that other machines and Sentai have indeed been alive and indeed have souls? Because when we see our heroes blowing up and dismantling a robot, it's no great loss, to be sure, because it's not really alive, or at least that's our perception of it. But when our heroes just go blasting and decapitating robots, well, now we have to pause for a second and wonder, did that robot have a soul, and did the Rangers just kill it, basically? So I find that to be a little bit disturbing here. Not to mention, we don't ever see any of the Buddyaroids practicing any type of religion. If anything, I would say they're probably atheists, because they don't practice anything, because they're machines, basically. But when Cheetah Nick dies, he goes and meets God in, you know, kind of a heavenly atmosphere, basically. So something else to take away from that is that even if you don't practice religion, it seems you already have a predetermined location. Because let's take a look at this God. I mean, first of all, he looks like Enter, which is kind of curious, and I haven't been able to figure out what that symbolism means exactly. But basically, he makes no doubt about it, he is God. He knows everything, he can do everything, and stuff like that. And he's the one that sends Nick to the alternate universe where the Go Busters are the, you know, without the Vargas invasion, basically. And, you know, we've seen gods in the past in Sentai, but they've never been God. They've never been Judeo-Christian creator of the universe. Because, you know, if we take a look, you got Gao God and Enma and Long and Dai Satan, Dai Jujin, and the Japanese equivalent of Serpentera, basically. They've all been godlike figures. But like in several cases, like, okay, so the Serpentera equivalent in Dai Ranger is a machine. And of course, before this movie, it was kind of assumed, at least in my understanding, that this machine just guarded the galaxy and brought order based on some sort of programming, not unlike Brainiac. Long is an omnipotent being that's similar to, say, Mixie Spitlick or Q or the Elemist, has omnipotent power and thinks of himself as a god in that regard. But he says he's a god, but never the god. And of course, even when we look in Gokaiger, the goddess that Black Condor is with, she's referred to as a goddess, not the goddess, but there is a reference later in Go Buster about going to the Shinto shrine and praying to God, basically. And that pulls us, I mean, there's so many different directions to go into, and I'm not going to necessarily argue theology here and stuff, but what Go Buster is trying to say, and by extent Gokaiger, and of course it connects to the rest of the Sentai universe, is it seems that Shinto is the true religion. Now, I don't know much about Shinto, other than I do know that it is a native Japanese religion, so forth. And of course, it does have the idea that, there are spirits in the world and everything has a spirit and things like that. And I believe, correct me if I'm wrong, but that's also the religion of Amaterasu and the creation myth and so forth. In any case, that's the big thing right here, is basically it's saying that Shinto is the correct religion. And why is it Shinto? Is because the Rangers in every series are always praying to a Shinto shrine for the Shinto god, basically. So this god in Go Buster is indeed the god of the Sentai universe. And what kind of questions does that raise exactly? Because let's look at the goddess in Gokaiger. Is it one and the same? Is there a pantheon of gods here going on? Or does he like to pretend he's a woman when he's with a guy or something like that? And are characters like Dai, Satan, and Long, are they related? Is there a mythology behind it that is similar to, say, the Greek pantheon? Again, I don't know much about Shinto, but is this even indeed Shinto, would be my thought? Or is it, as some people think, one god just worshipped differently throughout the world and stuff? Again, it's the whole fact that we have a character that is God, is not really questioned about it. And, it's not like it's some alternate universe, mumbo-jumbo kind of thing. It's kind of weird in the sense that it's accepted, it's understood, and this person can do it. Because this isn't like some sort of delusion that Nick had when he was damaged or anything like that. The ending of the Go Buster versus Go Buster has the two teams uniting together because of the power of God. And to what extent, I don't know why, because God's always supposed to teach a lesson, as far as I'm understanding here. What lesson did he teach Cheetah Nick? Or is this just the idea that it's just cool to have multiple teams cross over and we couldn't afford to get a new team in there? I don't know. It just raises so many questions, and I don't know how we're supposed to analyze this in the greater whole of Sentai, basically. Because I don't know. It just seems a bit odd to me that they would create this movie given a unified, yes, there is a God, and he's this guy, basically. I'm not sure what their point was. Maybe I'm reading too much into it, but again, what we've seen with, because here's the thing, in Power Rangers, they really stay away from religion. I mean, what's interesting about Power Rangers is we see hell a lot, but there are different versions of hell and different variations, but we never see heaven, basically. But here, in Sentai, we see heaven a number of times. We see numerous versions of hell as well. We see different gods and deities, but this is the first time, well, maybe second time if you count the goddess and Gokaiger, this is the first time we are introduced to the character of God. And so that brings up so many things, because also keep in mind that Sentai is a show that they've traveled through space, have characters from space and so forth. So what does God mean on the cosmological level, basically? Is he worshipped by other races? And like I said before, when somebody dies, in Sentai, because like I said, the Buddyroids are atheists in the fact that they don't practice religion. I can tell you that straight up, because I've never seen them pray or do anything like that before, and yet God still favors them, does things for them apparently, and they go to heaven. Seems a bit odd to me, because Most religions say if you don't believe in God, that would not go ahead and happen. So it leads me to believe here that maybe in the Sentai universe, if you're evil, like just evil, like the Vagras and all those guys, you go to hell. But if you're good or somewhere in the middle, you go to heaven. I don't know. I mean, what are the rules that are being established here? Because we don't get really any rules, just the fact that God exists, and how we tie that into the rest of the Sentai is something of a mystery at the moment. And I would really like to know how all the pieces really fall together. Because, don't claim that they're not tied together. Because of Gokaiger, because of the crossovers, all the different Sentai universes are tied into one of another. So it's the same universe, just different adventures being told throughout it, primarily through the vantage point of these various Sentai teams. So you go all the way back to Go Ranger, and Raptor and I, we watched that first episode. So where does God fit into that, basically? Again, so many questions I have, but I'm just really upset that the movie brings in this point, does not really explore it, because there's so much to explore with that concept in the universe that you've already created. But no, we just get this fun romp to see what Go Buster would be if it was an 80s Sentai, basically. So those are just kind of my quick thoughts about that. I wish I could be a little bit more coherent. I wish I can go into a little bit more detail on this stuff. But, guys, tell me what you think. Is it really God in there? Is it somebody who's fake? Is this indeed a delusion by Cheetah Nick? Who knows? There's several explanations that could be accepted. But I'm going to go with the fact that God exists in Sentai, and now we have to re-examine the universe, I think, the Sentai universe, to see how that kind of fits in, basically. So that's all I have to go ahead and say for right now. I want to thank you guys for listening tonight. Enjoy the rest of your evening, and the tavern is now closed.